What if I told you that our world is full of misunderstood mysteries, secrets so profound and elusive that they defy modern scientific explanation, phenomena that might forever remain cloaked in shadow if we refuse to open our minds to the impossible? Consider the great monuments of our time, places like Mount Rushmore, the White House, the Capitol building. Millions of people flock to these destinations every single year, walking their halls and marveling at their history. But what if they are not just static historical symbols, but rather intricate pieces of something infinitely larger, a cosmic puzzle hidden right in front of our eyes? This brings us to the profound mysteries of human consciousness and the veil that separates this life from whatever comes next. In your opinion, do near-passing experiences indicate the undeniable existence of life after our physical bodies give out? Or can they be simply explained away as the final desperate chemical reactions of a fading brain in its last moments? We want to hear your perspective, and if you have ever had an experience of stepping beyond the veil and wish to share it with us, please fill out the form provided in the description of this video so that we can respectfully and anonymously tell your story. Just send your account to the contact information supplied below so we can explore the unknown together. I was gone. No heartbeat, no brain activity. For 7 long minutes, my physical form ceased to function in any meaningful way. But what I experienced during that expanse of time did not feel like passing away. It felt more real than this. Doctors said I had clinically passed on, flatline, no pulse, no response from my pupils or my reflexes. But during those 7 minutes, I was somewhere else entirely. And what I saw there, what I felt and understood, still haunts me today. Everything went black, but not like sleep. It was silence. Complete silence. Then suddenly I became aware. But I wasn't in my body anymore. To understand how I arrived at that profound moment of complete physical failure, you have to understand the life I had been running from. A life constructed entirely on the fragile foundation of a meticulously crafted outward persona, masking a deeply broken interior. Growing up in a major metropolitan Bay Area, my childhood was defined by a constant, disorienting lack of stability. We bounced around from neighborhood to neighborhood, city to city, constantly packing and unpacking boxes. By the time I reached the 8th grade, I had already been enrolled in 3 different schools. But the physical moving was only a symptom of the deeper turbulence within the walls of our house. It became very clear to me, very early on, that the things happening in my household were not happening in the homes of my friends. My reality was saturated with excessive drinking, loud and frightening arguments, constant fighting, and crushing financial issues that hung over our heads like a dark, suffocating cloud. It was an incredibly challenging environment for a child to navigate. The only way I knew how to survive, the only coping mechanism that offered any semblance of control in a world that felt entirely out of control, was perfectionism. I channeled all my anxiety, all my fear, into becoming undeniably exceptional at everything I touched. I managed to become the most valuable player of my volleyball team, the basketball team, the softball team. During that same turbulent 8th grade year, I achieved almost exclusively flawless grades. I developed at an alarmingly young age a deeply duplicitous life. There was the internal reality, the chaotic truth of my home, and the heavy emotional burden I carried, which I ruthlessly stuffed down and distracted myself from. And then there was the highly successful, polished outward persona. To the rest of the world, it very much looked like I had it all together. I think a massive part of why I developed this relentless drive for perfection was a desperate need to keep my family intact. I harbored a very real, terrifying fear that if the outside world ever truly saw what was happening behind our closed doors, Child Protective Services would get involved, we would be thrown into the foster care system, and my brothers and I would be permanently separated. I'm the oldest of 3. My next youngest brother is about 6.5 years younger than me, and the youngest is 18 months behind him. It was a monumental responsibility for a child to shoulder, this profound necessity to ensure we stayed together, to be the anchor in a storm I didn't create. Alongside the emotional turmoil, my physical body was a constant source of struggle. I suffered from a multitude of medical problems as a kid. I endured blinding headaches, debilitating migraines that would leave me incapacitated, and frightening seizures that offered no explanation. My first major encounter with the surgical world happened when I was 11 years old. I had my tonsils and adenoids removed. Following the surgery, the medical staff prescribed a liquid codeine mixture to manage the pain. I vividly remember my mother handing me the small bottle, a simple, mundane gesture, just offering me my medicine. But the moment that liquid entered my system, a profound realization washed over me. It was incredible. It felt absolutely phenomenal. It was the ultimate distraction. It was entirely numbing. It wrapped my anxious, overburdened mind in a warm blanket of pure euphoria. I remember marching back to my mother, holding the bottle, and demanding more, completely captivated by the escape it provided. I remember her having to pull it away, shocked, telling me I wasn't supposed to be finished with it yet. That was the spark, the initial introduction to the profound relief of chemical numbing. By the time I was 13, the physical challenges escalated significantly. I was diagnosed with a severe adolescent bone disease. The growth plates in my shins closed up prematurely and entirely inappropriately, causing a severe, painful deformity. My lower legs began to bow outward significantly. This required intense surgical intervention. My first operation for this condition happened when I was 13, and my final one wasn't until I was 18. Consequently, the entirety of my high school experience was viewed from the confines of a wheelchair, maneuvering with a walker, leaning heavily on crutches, or hobbling with a cane. It was a massive portion of my formative teenage years spent in a state of physical limitation. This coincided, unfortunately, with the release of a very popular movie about a man who runs across the country, which meant I was subjected to endless repetitive jokes from my peers. Despite the pain and the bullying, I pushed through. I graduated high school. I don't even recall the specific day of my graduation, because literally the very next week, driven by an innate desire to fix things, I enrolled in an emergency medical technician course at our local community college. I earned my certification and found myself absolutely in love with the work. I was hired by a company that provided on-site, immediate medical care for massive concerts, chaotic festivals, and pulsing nightclubs. I always joke about it, but it was the absolute truth. I was spending my nights hanging out in intense, loud nightclubs providing critical medical care long before I was legally old enough to even walk through their front doors as a patron. I was just a fresh-faced 18-year-old medical professional thrown into the deep end of human excess. After working as an EMT, I felt an undeniable pull to further my capabilities. I wanted to become a paramedic. I applied to a rigorous paramedic academy, but my childhood history of seizures abruptly slammed that door shut. I was informed I could never obtain the required ambulance driver certification. It felt like a crushing defeat. A path I was desperate to walk suddenly closed off. But I pivoted. I evaluated the collegiate credits I had already accumulated, looked at the available options, and decided to apply for nursing school. I pushed through the grueling curriculum, earned my Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and immediately threw myself into the most intense environment possible. I completed my preceptorship in the emergency room of a massive, chaotic Level 1 trauma center. To call the experience intense would be a massive understatement. The sheer volume of human suffering I witnessed was staggering. The most difficult realization was that a vast majority of the horrific trauma we treated was the direct result of things human beings intentionally did to one another. There was a never-ending stream of brutal assaults, devastating gunshot wounds, and horrific stabbings. At the time, I was completely and utterly unaware of how profoundly sensitive I was to the energetic weight of that environment. I was absorbing the pain, the terror, and the grief of every patient, and I simply could not handle it. I possessed no healthy mechanisms to process the darkness I swam in daily. That is when the addictions that had been lying dormant since that first taste of codeine truly exploded. Professionally, I was an exceptional nurse. If you were brought in with a massive, life-threatening injury, you wanted to be placed in my trauma bay. I was sharp, precise, and unwavering under pressure. But the absolute second my shift ended, the moment I stepped out of those automatic sliding doors, my sole objective was obliteration. It was either a massive quantity of alcohol or a handful of powerful prescription pills. The tragic reality was that this behavior was heavily normalized within the high-stress culture of the trauma center. A large group of us would clock out at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, exhausted and traumatized, and we knew exactly which local restaurants served alcohol at that early hour. We rationalized our destructive behavior with ease. We told ourselves that we had just finished a grueling workday, that the rest of the world enjoyed happy hour after their shifts, so why shouldn't we? We deserved the release. For that entire period of my life, I was deeply, hopelessly addicted to prescription narcotics and consuming lethal amounts of alcohol. I was the textbook definition of a highly functional addict. To the world, I was a hero saving lives. In reality, I was desperately trying to numb my own existence. This unsustainable lifestyle finally caught up to me in the spring. A group of fellow nurses and I decided to blow off steam. We rented a limousine, organizing our own private rolling party. As was typical for me, somewhere along the route, I drank myself into a state of complete blackout oblivion. When the limousine finally stopped and I attempted to exit the vehicle, the heel of my shoe caught sharply on the heavy metal doorframe. I fell hard, crashing down with all my weight, my knee slamming brutally into the concrete curb. The impact resulted in a fracture of my femur. Because the bone had not completely displaced, the doctors determined I didn't require surgery, but the treatment plan mandated 8 long weeks of strict total immobilization. For 2 months, I was trapped in my house, unable to move, unable to work, left entirely alone with my thoughts and my limitless supply of chemical escapes. During that period of forced stagnation, deep within the veins of my injured leg, completely unbeknownst to me, a massive, silent threat was forming. A blood clot was slowly growing, gathering size and density. When the 8 weeks were finally up, I was desperate to return to the emergency room. I had drained my bank accounts and exhausted my paid time off. To compensate, I immediately signed up for a grueling series of back-to-back overtime shifts. I subjected my weakened body to a brutal 16-hour marathon on my feet. During that shift, my injured leg began to scream in agony. It turned a dark, angry shade of red, swelling significantly and radiating a deep, pulsing soreness. I did exactly what every stubborn, deeply in denial nurse does. I grabbed a thick elastic bandage, wrapped the leg as tightly as I possibly could to compress the swelling, swallowed a handful of painkillers, and simply powered through the agony. When I finally dragged myself home the following morning, the sun was shining brightly. It was a beautiful, warm summer day. My intention was to simply go out to the backyard, lay in the sun, and sleep off the exhaustion. I walked into my bathroom to apply sunscreen, but that massive clot, the one that had been quietly growing in my stagnant leg for 8 weeks, had broken free. It traveled up through my circulatory system and slammed violently into my lungs, causing a massive pulmonary embolism. Right before I entered the bathroom, fully intending to sleep the day away, I had consumed my usual cocktail of escape. I had swallowed a powerful sleeping pill, multiple strong narcotics for the pain in my leg, and an allergy medication to counteract the intense itching caused by the narcotics. I had consumed a massive handful of heavy central nervous system depressants. When the clot hit my lungs and cut off my oxygen, I instantly lost consciousness. Because of the massive amount of sedatives in my system, my body did not wake up to fight for air. I stayed completely unconscious, collapsed on the hard bathroom floor for somewhere between 8 and 10 grueling hours. The physical position I collapsed in was catastrophic. My head and upper torso were slumped awkwardly inside the porcelain bathtub, while my legs hung heavily over the outside edge. The hard, blunt rim of the tub was pressed directly across my lower abdomen and my hips, cutting off all circulation to my lower extremities. When human muscle tissue is deprived of blood flow for an extended period, the cells begin to die rapidly. As the muscles break down, they release massive amounts of toxic proteins directly into the bloodstream, a condition that quickly clogs and destroys the delicate filtration system of the kidneys. When my husband finally returned home from his workday, he found me unresponsive, contorted over the edge of the tub. We were utterly terrified. As I slowly regained a hazy, confused consciousness, we frantically tried to assess the damage. My legs were completely paralyzed. I couldn't move my toes. I couldn't bend my knees. I had absolutely no sensation or control below my waist. We were terrified that I had somehow severed my spinal cord or suffered a massive traumatic brain injury during the fall. We called emergency services immediately, and an ambulance rushed me to the nearest hospital. The emergency room physicians quickly discovered the massive, life-threatening clot lodged in my lungs. Furthermore, the blood tests revealed the catastrophic damage caused by the crush injury. My kidneys were in a state of total cascading failure. I was immediately admitted to the intensive care unit. The physical transformation my body underwent over the next several days was horrific. I was placed on continuous dialysis in a desperate attempt to clean my toxic blood, but the fluids were backing up everywhere. I entered the hospital weighing a fragile 67 pounds. 10 days later, due to the massive systemic fluid retention caused by the organ failure, my body weight had skyrocketed to over 200 pounds. I was entirely unrecognizable. My skin was stretched so tightly over the accumulated fluid that it began to physically tear apart. The pressure was so immense that the palms of my hands and the thick skin on the soles of my feet literally split open. Massive, agonizing blisters formed up and down my legs, constantly seeping fluid onto the hospital bed. I was drowning inside my own skin. In a misguided attempt to relieve the crushing pressure in my swollen abdomen and allow my compressed lungs more room to expand, a medical resident decided to perform a procedure to drain the fluid. However, she performed the procedure entirely blindly, failing to use the standard ultrasound machine to safely guide the long, sharp needle. Instead of finding the pockets of fluid, she pushed the needle directly into my internal organs. She blindly punctured multiple holes directly through my intestines. For the next 48 hours, completely undetected by the medical staff, toxic waste and bacteria slowly leaked out of my perforated bowels directly into my sterile abdominal cavity. I rapidly developed a massive, overwhelming case of sepsis. The infection raged through my weakened system like a wildfire. It was late in the evening when the sheer magnitude of the systemic collapse hit me. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I was overwhelmed by an undeniable, crushing sense of impending doom. It wasn't anxiety. It was a profound, chilling certainty. I remember turning my head slowly on the pillow, looking directly into my husband's terrified eyes, and telling him, with absolute clarity, that I was going to pass away that night. The medical team finally realized the catastrophic error and immediately rushed me down to the operating room. My body was so degraded, so swollen and fragile, that they couldn't even complete the initial surgery to repair the perforations. They were forced to leave my abdomen open and send me back to the intensive care unit. Over the next 36 agonizing hours, they rushed me back into the operating theater 3 separate times. Because my tissues were so edematous and compromised, standard stitches would simply tear through the flesh. To keep my abdomen closed, they resorted to using massive, heavy-duty retention sutures, the kind of brutal, thick plastic wiring typically reserved for holding the chest cavity together after open-heart surgery. It was barbaric. Simultaneously, the critical care doctors were forced to make an impossible decision. The massive blood clot was still sitting in my lungs, a constant, lethal threat. They had to restart the heavy intravenous blood-thinning medications to prevent the clot from growing or shifting, knowing full well that my surgical wounds were fresh and fragile. Predictably, the delicate balance failed. The main surgical incision across my abdomen ruptured internally. I began to bleed out at a catastrophic rate. The chaos in the intensive care room was absolute. There were doctors and nurses swarming entirely around my bed, their voices sharp and urgent. They were hanging bags of blood products, plasma, and platelets, desperately trying to pump them into my collapsing veins as fast as the blood was violently pouring out of my open wounds. The physical sensation of rapidly losing that much blood is indescribable. I was so unfathomably cold, a deep, bone-chilling ice that radiated from the center of my chest. I was in an amount of agony that defied human comprehension. My entire body was seizing in violent, uncontrollable tremors of hypovolemic shock. The heavy hospital bed physically shook, rattling against the floor from the sheer force of my convulsions. Through the fading edges of my vision, I remember forcing my eyes upward to look at the glowing digital vital sign monitor mounted on the wall above me. The red numbers displaying my blood pressure read 46 over a flashing question mark. The machine could no longer register a diastolic pressure. My heart was pumping against empty veins. One of my very last conscious earthly thoughts was a moment of dark, ironic clinical observation. I thought to myself, wow, I didn't even know the machine was capable of reading a number that low. And then, instantaneously, everything changed. The violent, bone-crushing pain simply vanished. The horrific freezing cold evaporated. The chaotic shouting of the medical team, the frantic beeping of the failing alarms, the violent shaking of the bed, it all simply ceased to exist. In its place, an overwhelming, profound sense of welcoming and deep, unconditional nurturing washed over me. I was still somewhat present in the physical space of the hospital room, hovering in a state of peaceful observation, completely detached from the mutilated body on the bed below. At some undefined point, the lingering connection to my physical form severed entirely. I slipped into a state of total unconsciousness regarding the earthly realm. My very first conscious realization in this new state of existence was a feeling of profound recognition. I thought, with complete clarity, oh yes, this is passing away. It wasn't a discovery, it was a remembrance. It felt exactly like a familiar journey, a path I had walked countless times before. There was absolutely nothing frightening about it. The fear of the end, the terror I had harbored my entire life, simply did not exist in this space. From that exact moment forward, I was entirely removed from physical reality. I felt like I was being pulled, slowly, inexorably, into something vast and incomprehensible. At first, the sensation was peaceful, almost too peaceful. The sheer absence of struggle was overwhelming. And then, the environment shifted. I found myself existing. When I say myself, I must clarify that I was no longer the flawed, traumatized, perfection-obsessed nurse. I was no longer the accumulation of earthly labels and pains. I was my true essence. I feel like, right now, I am merely playing a temporary role in a flesh suit. But in that space, I was the larger, infinite, unbound version of myself. I possessed no physical body, no arms, no legs, no boundaries. Yet my perception was infinitely expanded. I could see in a complete, unbroken 360-degree panorama, but it wasn't restricted to a single, flat plane. It was a spherical form of absolute vision. I could perceive everything, in every direction, simultaneously. Then I saw the light. It was positioned directly above my central point of awareness, and it was everything. It wasn't just a visual phenomenon. It was a physical and emotional weight of pure love. The best way I can describe the visual aspect is to compare it to being completely submerged deep underwater. When you swim far below the surface and look up towards the sky, you know exactly where the sun is. There is a brilliant, undeniable focal point of intense illumination, but the light itself is diffuse, scattered through the water, shimmering and sparkling around the edges. This light was exactly like that, but infinitely brighter and overwhelmingly warm. It was the absolute source of all creation. It was the universe. It was the singular consciousness. The human vocabulary lacks the capacity to accurately label it, but that magnificent light felt like the totality of all existence. Basking in its glow, a profound, unshakable knowing settled into my infinite awareness. I knew with absolute certainty that I was an intrinsic part of that light. I had originated from it. I belonged within it. In my entire physical life on Earth, moving from town to town, I had never once experienced a true sense of belonging. But in that radiant space, I felt a level of homesickness cured, a deep ancestral longing finally fulfilled on a scale I had never imagined possible. Yet despite this overwhelming sense of home, I realized I had no mechanism to move closer to it. I possessed no physical body to propel myself, no means of locomotion in this void. It felt remarkably similar to those frustrating dreams where you desperately need to run from a threat, but your legs refuse to move. Or when you need to scream, but no sound escapes your throat. In that profound moment, a wave of intense desperation washed over my consciousness. It felt exactly like the panic of drowning. I wasn't scared, and I wasn't in pain, but the absolute necessity to merge completely with that source light was as vital, as urgent, and as undeniable as a suffocating human's desperate need for oxygen. I required that light to exist. I needed to be consumed by it. As I hovered in this state of desperate longing, my perception shifted once again. I found myself positioned within an impossibly vast, expansive space. The architecture of this realm was entirely non-physical, yet it felt highly structured, almost mechanical in its design. The best analogy my human mind can construct is that it resembled a massive, infinitely complex revolving door, or an ancient, gigantic photographic slide carousel. The space was divided into countless individual segments, extending outward in a massive circle. As I focused my awareness on this structure, I realized what it contained. Each individual section of this cosmic carousel held a single moment from my earthly existence. But these weren't merely flat, two-dimensional memories. Each segment existed simultaneously as a frozen photograph I could analyze objectively. A fully immersive, three-dimensional holographic movie I could observe as a third-party bystander, and a profound, lived experience I was forced to re-enter. It wasn't what people typically describe when they talk about the end. There were no choirs of angels. There were no pearly gates or streets of gold. There was no stereotypical heaven. There was just an overwhelming, undeniable presence. It was a vast, omniscient consciousness, quietly observing me. And this presence knew absolutely everything about me. It knew every secret, every lie, every hidden motivation I had ever harbored. There was nowhere to hide. As the carousel began to turn, I was plunged into the life review. But the most staggering aspect of this process was the fracturing of my perception. I wasn't just reliving my actions from my own limited defensive viewpoint. In a single instantaneous moment, my consciousness split, allowing me to experience the exact same event from the perspective of absolutely everyone involved. I was suddenly granted total, unfiltered access to the exact thoughts, the hidden insecurities, and the raw emotional states of the people I had interacted with. At first, the carousel moved slowly, deliberately, granting me ample time to truly sit with and absorb the gravity of each isolated interaction. I experienced, in agonizing real-time clarity, the direct impact of my existence on the world around me. I didn't just see the consequences of my physical actions or the sting of my spoken words. I felt the heavy, rippling impact of my silent judgments, my hidden thoughts, and the sheer energetic frequency I had projected into the world. The omniscient presence granted me a brief, illuminating window into the past traumas and hidden struggles of the people I had encountered, allowing me to fully understand exactly why they had reacted to me the way they did, and precisely how my presence had altered their trajectory. I became profoundly aware of a terrifying truth. Every single interaction we have, no matter how brief or seemingly insignificant, permanently alters the energetic state of another human being. We either leave them in a neutral, unaffected state, elevate them to a more positive, loving frequency, or drag them down into a darker, more painful place. There were mercifully moments in the review where I had acted with genuine kindness, where I had done something truly good without expectation of reward. Experiencing those moments from the perspective of the recipient felt incredibly warm, validating, and deeply joyful. However, there were countless moments where I had operated from a place of deep selfishness, anger, or toxic judgment. Reliving those moments from the perspective of the people I had hurt was profoundly agonizing. The pain I had inflicted was returned to me tenfold. But crucially, this review was not a trial. I was not standing before a wrathful judge waiting for damnation. The overwhelming presence observing me radiated nothing but unconditional love. The evaluation of my life was a process of self-discernment. It was about recognizing, on a profound soul level, what frequencies aligned with truth and love, and which ones created dissonance and pain. I was analyzing my own failures with the exact same patient, nurturing energy a loving mother uses when teaching a frustrated child how to tie their shoes. When the child fails, the mother doesn't scream or punish. She gently untangles the laces and encourages them to try again. That was the energy saturating the review. It was a completely non-judgmental, deeply nurturing process of recognizing where I had strayed from love. This process fundamentally shattered the illusion of the duplicitous life I had so carefully constructed. In that realm of absolute truth, it became glaringly obvious that you can perform all the socially acceptable actions, you can say all the polite words, and you can maintain a flawless outward appearance. But if the internal intention driving those actions is rooted in selfishness, manipulation, or hidden malice, the energetic impact on the universe is just as destructive as committing an overtly evil act. I had lived a completely unconscious existence, merely surviving from one exhausting shift to the next, entirely disconnected from the profound responsibility of my own energy. Furthermore, I was forced to confront the immense toxic mountain of self-hatred I had harbored for decades. I possessed zero self-compassion. I operated under a deeply ingrained, paralyzing belief that I was fundamentally unworthy, broken, and never good enough. During the review, I realized, with shocking clarity, that directing such venomous, hateful thoughts inward toward myself felt exactly as destructive, exactly as painful to the fabric of the universe as physically striking another human being. The universe did not differentiate between the cruelty I aimed at others and the cruelty I inflicted upon my own soul. Some of the memories presented on the carousel were events I would have completely dismissed as utterly inconsequential, forgotten fragments of a busy life, yet it felt as though I was meticulously examining every single second of my earthly journey. One specific memory stands out above all the rest, burning with a profound, illuminating clarity. It was a memory from elementary school, likely the first or second grade. There was a quiet, timid girl in our class who was the constant target of relentless bullying. Viewing the memory now, with the expanded awareness of my adult soul, it was heartbreakingly obvious that she was suffering from severe neglect and likely deep physical abuse at home. She wore the heavy, invisible shroud of a broken child. On this particular day, 3 of the most popular girls in our grade had cornered her. They had her pinned against the rough brick wall in the outdoor courtyard, their faces twisted in childish cruelty, taunting and demeaning her. I was across the playground, hanging upside down on the metal monkey bars. I saw the confrontation unfolding. Without a second thought, I dropped to the sand, sprinted across the blacktop with all the speed my tiny legs could muster, and shoved myself violently between the bullies and the terrified girl. The review forced me to watch this play out, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of amusement at the sight of my tiny, furious self. I stood there, legs planted wide, one hand firmly on my hip, the other pointing an accusatory finger directly in the faces of the popular girls, loudly shaming them, fiercely declaring that their behavior was entirely unacceptable. In that exact suspended moment within the life review, my consciousness fractured, and I experienced the emotional explosion of that event from every possible angle. First, I felt the sharp, stinging wave of hot shame that washed over the 3 bullies. They instantly knew, deep in their developing consciousness, that they had been caught in an act of cruelty. But the most profound, universe-altering sensation came when I entered the consciousness of the bullied girl. As I stood between her and her tormentors, I felt the exact moment her internal reality shifted. For perhaps the very first time in her short, tragic life, someone had physically demonstrated that she possessed inherent value. I felt the overwhelming, blinding wave of realization wash over her soul. She was worth standing up for. She mattered. I felt the crushing weight of her worthlessness crack and fall away. The omniscient presence then allowed me to see the massive, branching ripples that single, tiny action created. By demonstrating her worth in that isolated courtyard, I had fundamentally altered her trajectory. She carried that tiny seed of self-worth forward. It changed how she interacted with others, how she loved, how she eventually healed. It was a breathtaking visualization of cause and effect. It looked exactly like violently hurling a heavy stone into a perfectly still, glass-like lake. The initial splash is small, but the concentric rings of energy radiate outward infinitely, bouncing off the shores, intersecting with other ripples, altering the entire surface of the water forever. I realized, with terrifying awe, the immense godlike power we possess in every single interaction. We hold the absolute capability to inflict devastating harm or offer profound generational healing with nothing more than a passing word or a simple gesture. As the review progressed, I was granted endless time to sit within each memory, to fully digest the emotional gravity of every choice. Once a lesson was absorbed, the cosmic machinery would click loudly, and my consciousness would instantaneously snap into the next scene. Navigation in this realm was entirely dictated by focus. Wherever I directed my attention, wherever I focused my energetic intention, I simply existed there, instantaneously. But eventually, the rhythmic clicking of the carousel began to accelerate. The massive structure spun faster and faster, blurring the individual memories into a continuous stream of light and emotion. The rotational speed reached an incomprehensible velocity until it felt as though every single moment of my life, every joy, every trauma, every interaction I had ever had, was happening to me simultaneously. I was experiencing the totality of my existence all at once. The immense speed of the spinning carousel began to generate a massive, inescapable gravitational pull. It formed a terrifying, spiraling vortex of energy above me. The architectural structure of the room vanished. There was no longer a floor or a ceiling, only the blinding rush of the vortex pulling my consciousness upward. As I was dragged toward the apex of the funnel, a profound, undeniable realization locked into my mind. I saw an invisible, energetic threshold looming just above me. I knew with absolute, unshakable certainty that if my consciousness crossed that specific line, the severing would be permanent. There would be absolutely no return to the physical world. The journey would be over. The very instant that realization materialized, a singular, powerful image slammed into my awareness. The face of my husband. In that fraction of a second, I felt the crushing weight of the grief he would endure. I knew, with devastating clarity, that he would completely shatter if I abandoned him under these horrific circumstances, leaving him alone in that cold hospital room with my broken body. As the vortex dragged me closer and closer to the point of no return, a sudden, fierce rebellion flared within my spirit. Looking back, the sheer audacity of my reaction is almost comical. I was suspended in the infinite presence of the universe, hovering on the brink of eternal peace, and I essentially held up a hand to the divine creator and demanded, "Hold on just 1 second, I need a minute." I had absolutely every intention of crossing that threshold. I deeply, desperately wanted to go home, to merge with the light. But the overwhelming pull of my earthly connection, the profound responsibility I felt toward my husband's heart, forced a massive shift in my trajectory. I formulated a desperate, instantaneous plan. I was going to force my way back down, re-enter my destroyed body just long enough to look him in the eyes, say a proper goodbye, ensure he knew I was okay, and then I would immediately return to the light. I was acutely aware of exactly what that decision entailed. I knew I had to force my infinite consciousness back into a physical vessel that was entirely mutilated, swollen, infected, and bleeding out. I knew the sheer, unimaginable magnitude of the physical agony waiting for me. I dreaded it with every fiber of my being, yet the compulsion to offer him closure was stronger than the fear of the pain. I simply had to do it. I didn't hear a booming voice. I didn't receive a scroll of instructions, but I understood a clear, undeniable message from the presence surrounding me. It communicated, without words, that it was not my time to remain. But before it allowed me to begin the violent descent back to earth, it imparted a profound, lingering revelation. The presence showed me something, a glimpse of the fundamental nature of reality, the intricate, beautiful tapestry of human suffering and divine purpose. It was a truth so vast and overwhelming that it permanently rewired my soul. It showed me something I can absolutely never forget. Determined to return, I focused all my energetic will on escaping the gravitational pull of the vortex. I needed to break the cosmic machinery holding me in the review space. In a completely illogical, deeply human reaction, I willed my non-existent hands into fists and violently punched downward, striking the invisible spinning gears of the carousel. The mechanism shattered. The moment I broke through the barrier, I felt a violent, chaotic rushing sensation. I was hurtling downward through the void, completely out of control. Suddenly, in the darkness between realms, I sensed it. My husband's hand. He was reaching for me across the veil. We locked together in a desperate, clinging grasp, resembling a dramatic cliffhanger from a movie, holding on by our sheer fingernails. As the broken machinery spun wildly around us, I felt an intense, agonizing compression. To fit my infinitely expanded soul back into the tiny, broken confines of my physical brain, I had to be violently crushed. It felt absurdly cartoonish, as if I were being flattened by a massive cosmic steamroller, compressed into a two-dimensional sheet, and then violently sucked back down into the dense, heavy meat of my body. Then suddenly, the universe shattered. I slammed back into physical reality, and the agony was absolute. It was a suffocating, blinding explosion of pain. The deafening roar of the hospital machinery assaulted my ears. The harsh, fluorescent lights burned through my closed eyelids. The room was absolute chaos. From a purely medical perspective, during my absence, the team had aggressively intervened. They had paralyzed my vocal cords and shoved a thick plastic breathing tube down my throat, reattaching me to the mechanical ventilator. They had pumped a massive, desperate volume of donated blood and clotting factors into my veins, barely managing to staunch the catastrophic internal hemorrhage. However, despite their interventions, I had remained entirely unresponsive. I was an empty shell. But when my consciousness violently re-entered the vessel, the environment shifted. I felt a heavy, warm pressure enveloping my right hand. It was my husband. He was leaning close, his voice thick with terror and exhaustion, whispering directly into my ear over the rhythmic hissing of the ventilator. "Squeeze my hand," he begged. "Please, just squeeze my hand." That specific moment, sensing his raw, desperate grief anchoring me to the physical world, was the catalyst. I marshaled every ounce of returning strength, fighting through the agonizing fog of sedatives and shock, and I squeezed his fingers. The connection was made. He knew I was still in there. I have absolutely no concept of how much time passed after that initial movement before I truly regained full waking consciousness. The journey back to the surface was agonizingly slow. My total hospitalization, the sheer fight to rebuild a body that had essentially destroyed itself, lasted for 3.5 grueling months. I spent weeks trapped in that bed, staring at the ceiling, silently wrestling with the profound physical and psychological ramifications of everything I had endured. When I finally began to process the magnitude of the experience, I found myself entirely isolated. Our entire social circle consisted exclusively of highly logical, scientifically driven doctors, nurses, and medical professionals. When I tentatively attempted to share fragments of what had happened to me, their reactions were swift and dismissive. They immediately defaulted to clinical materialism. They patted my hand and explained it away with comfortable, sterile medical jargon. "It makes perfect sense, Daniel," they would say kindly. "You were profoundly hypoxic. Your brain was entirely starved of oxygen. You were in severe hemorrhagic shock. It is a well-documented medical fact that the dying brain releases a massive, hallucinogenic flood of DMT in its final moments to ease the transition." They offered every standard textbook explanation to reduce my profound spiritual awakening to a series of misfiring synapses and chemical hallucinations. Faced with this wall of clinical denial, I retreated. I completely shut down. I refused to speak of the light, the review, or the omniscient presence to anyone. Furthermore, I began to violently discount the experience myself. I desperately tried to convince my own mind that it was merely a terrifying dream induced by trauma. I did this because the implications of the experience being absolutely real were far too massive, far too terrifying for my fragile psyche to handle. I had been raised in a strict traditional Lutheran household. The version of God I had been taught to fear, a distant judgmental deity prone to anger and demanding rigid obedience, bore absolutely zero resemblance to the boundless, unconditionally loving, nurturing source I had merged with. My entire theological framework was shattered. I possessed no mental scaffolding to support the existence of a creator who simply observed and loved without condemnation. More terrifyingly, I was completely unequipped to handle the profound, lingering after-effects of the journey. Returning from the light had permanently altered my energetic boundaries. Before the accident, I was a naturally empathetic person, which made nursing so difficult. But post-return, my sensitivity was magnified to a terrifying degree. I had become a raw, open nerve in a chaotic world. If I attempted to walk through a crowded grocery store or navigate a busy street, I would be violently assaulted by the emotional states of the strangers around me. Without warning, I would suddenly be overwhelmed by a crushing wave of suicidal depression, or a burning, furious anger, or a paralyzing spike of pure anxiety. These intense emotional states would wash over me and vanish just as quickly as the stranger walked past. The boundaries between my soul and the world had dissolved. The sensory overload became so extreme that I began to experience auditory hallucinations. I would clearly hear voices, fragmented sentences, and desperate whispers in empty rooms, sounds that absolutely no one else could perceive. Combining the undeniable memories of the light with this terrifying new reality of absorbing the world's pain, I reached the only logical conclusion my medical mind could formulate. The severe trauma, the lack of oxygen, and the massive infection had permanently broken my brain. I assumed I was losing my mind. The psychological terror culminated one evening when I broke down completely. I sat my exhausted husband down and confessed my darkest fear. I told him, with absolute sincerity, that I was entirely convinced the medical trauma had triggered a severe, late-onset case of schizophrenia. I begged him to help me find a psychiatrist. I needed intense medication. I needed to be fixed. I had absolutely nowhere else to put this profound spiritual awakening other than directly into the rigid box of psychiatric pathology. I pathologized the most beautiful experience of my life because society offered no other alternative. The very instant the surgical team finally declared me medically stable and cleared me for travel, my husband and I made a radical, desperate decision. We needed to escape the ghosts of the hospital and the crushing weight of our old life. We systematically sold absolutely everything we owned. We quit our demanding, high-paying jobs in the Bay Area, packed whatever fit into a few suitcases, and bought one-way tickets to the remote, sun-drenched islands of the Caribbean. We threw ourselves into the unknown, determined to build a completely new existence from the ground up. To survive in the islands, I started a very small, humble business offering house cleaning and property management services for local vacation rentals and Airbnbs. One of my regular clients was an eccentric, older gentleman who was, by all definitions, a severe hoarder. His massive house was a chaotic labyrinth of towering, precarious stacks of old newspapers, magazines, and forgotten documents. His wife, desperate for order, secretly hired me to deep clean his primary office while he was away on the mainland recovering from a minor medical procedure. It was a covert operation to reclaim the space. I spent hours meticulously dusting and organizing around these massive, dusty towers of paper. As I was working near his heavy wooden desk, a bizarre compulsion seized me. I stopped cleaning entirely. My eyes locked onto a specific, massive pile of documents. Without thinking, guided by an invisible hand, I reached roughly a third of the way down into the center of the stack. My fingers immediately grasped a single, thin, old manila folder. The edges were heavily yellowed with age, and the paper felt brittle. I pulled it out, sat down heavily on the edge of the guest bed, and opened it. The document inside was ancient. It was clearly produced on an old, heavy typewriter, the ink slightly faded, characteristic of a university report from the late 1980s. As my eyes scanned the first few lines, a harsh internal dialogue flared up. I began violently scolding myself. "What are you doing, Danielle? This is a massive violation of privacy. This is highly inappropriate. You do not rifle through a client's personal belongings. Put it back immediately." I had never in my entire professional life snooped through someone's home. But the compulsion was absolute. I couldn't look away. As I read deeper into the faded text, the breath left my lungs. The document was a master's thesis paper written by a psychology student, entirely dedicated to the meticulous study and documentation of near-passing experiences. The gentleman whose office I was cleaning was one of the 3 primary subjects interviewed at length for the study. The paper detailed his horrific accident. He had been an avid scuba diver. While standing on a wooden dock, a pressurized oxygen tank sitting next to him had catastrophically exploded, the massive concussive force practically tearing his torso apart. He had bled out on the splintered wood. My hands began to shake violently as I read his transcribed words. The specific language he used to describe the transition out of his body was identical to mine. The way he meticulously detailed the brilliant, unconditionally loving light, the overwhelming sense of returning home, the diffuse, sparkling edges of the divine source. It was an exact mirror of my own memory. But the most shattering revelation came on the next page. He described in agonizing detail being pulled into an infinitely massive non-physical room. He described the architecture. He described the mechanical, rotating structure. He described being placed inside a cosmic circular apparatus where he was forced to review every moment of his life, experiencing his actions through the emotional lenses of the people he had touched. I dropped the folder onto the bed, buried my face in my hands, and absolutely lost it. I began sobbing uncontrollably, deep, racking heaves of raw emotion tearing through my chest. In that dusty, cluttered room, the massive, suffocating wall of denial I had built finally collapsed. The profound realization washed over me. If this random, isolated man, decades ago, had experienced the exact same mechanical structure, the exact same light, and the exact same emotional review, then my experience could not possibly be a mere hallucination. It could not be dismissed as the random, misfiring synapses of a dying, oxygen-starved brain. It was undeniably, objectively real. There was a fundamental truth to the universe that I had touched. I walked slowly downstairs, clutching the yellowed folder to my chest like a lifeline, and sat motionless on their living room couch, waiting in silence for hours until they returned from the airport. When the front door finally opened, the gentleman walked in, leaning on a cane. The moment his eyes landed on me, sitting there with tear-streaked cheeks holding his deepest secret, his eyes widened in absolute shock. He stopped dead in his tracks. He didn't yell. He didn't ask what I was doing. He simply looked deep into my eyes, saw the profound recognition staring back at him, and whispered softly, "You've seen it." That single whispered sentence shattered the silence of decades. It opened up a massive, profound conversation that lasted late into the night. It turned out he had never even possessed the courage to tell his own wife about the entirety of his journey. Terrified of the same clinical dismissal I had faced, we had no idea how many years that specific folder had sat buried in that towering stack of paper, completely untouched, waiting for the exact moment I needed to find it. That miraculous intervention was the definitive turning point. It was the absolute confirmation I needed to stop running and finally accept the reality of my journey. However, the universe was not finished refining me. In the fall of that year, the idyllic life we had built in the Caribbean was violently ripped apart. The islands took a direct catastrophic hit from two massive, unprecedented Category 5 hurricanes, Irma and Maria, arriving back-to-back within weeks of each other. The devastation was absolute. Our home, our community, our entire infrastructure was obliterated. In the humid, apocalyptic aftermath, with no power or running water, a toxic black mold began to rapidly consume everything left standing. Living in that heavily contaminated environment completely destroyed my fragile immune system. I became horrifically sick once again. My weight plummeted drastically, dropping down to a skeletal 104 pounds. I was plagued by a terrifying array of severe, cascading medical issues, struggling just to breathe. I was completely bedridden, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had survived the trauma bay, only to slowly rot away on a ruined island. During the darkest, most painful phase of that healing process, stripped of all distractions and forced into total isolating silence, the connection to the other side violently reopened. In the quiet darkness of my ruined bedroom, a voice materialized in my consciousness. It wasn't an auditory hallucination. It was a clear, undeniable transmission of pure thought, ringing with absolute authority. The voice was entirely devoid of sympathy. It was sharp, direct, and profoundly exasperated. It said, clear as a bell, "Well, of course you are suffering. You are entirely failing to do the work you explicitly promised to do when you demanded to go back. No wonder your physical vessel is rejecting you." The message I received in that moment was an ultimatum. The presence communicated, "Look, the door is open. You can exit this physical realm right now if the burden is too heavy. You can come back to the light. But you fought tooth and nail. You explicitly demanded to return to that broken body because you claimed you had vital work to complete. So, if you are going to stay, it is time to stop hiding. Let's do the work, That profound reprimand forced me to sit up and face the ultimate reality. I had to completely lean into the sheer, terrifying magnitude of what I had seen and exactly what it meant for my existence. Slowly, through deep meditation and painful introspection, the missing fragments of my transition returned. I had a sudden, crystal-clear remembrance of the specific contract I had made before punching through the gears. The core purpose of my agonizing return, the reason I fought through the pain, was to dedicate my life to helping humanity understand that the cessation of the physical heartbeat is absolutely not the end. I was sent back to eradicate the paralyzing, suffocating fear of the void. I needed to teach people that passing on is not a terrifying, permanent oblivion, but simply a beautiful, necessary transition into a profoundly expanded state of being. Eventually, as the illness slowly receded and my strength returned, I walked into the kitchen and casually announced to my incredibly patient husband, "I finally know what I am supposed to do. I have to become a guide for the dying." He stopped washing the dishes and just stared at me, the familiar look of loving confusion washing over his face. I smiled and clarified, "Yes, I know it sounds insane. Not a traditional life coach helping people achieve goals. I need to be a death coach. I need to walk them to the threshold." I immediately opened my laptop and typed the phrase into a search engine. Instantly, the screen populated with resources concerning a profession I had never, in my entire medical career, heard of: a death doula. It was a revelation. It was exactly the framework I needed. I immediately enrolled in a rigorous training academy and threw myself entirely into the study. Looking back at the entirety of my journey, the trauma, the addiction, the agonizing medical collapse, and the profound revelation of the light, it all feels like an incredibly complex process of waking up from a deep, collective amnesia. It feels as though human existence is merely a highly immersive, temporary role-playing game. We are eternal, infinite souls who temporarily agree to don these heavy, restrictive meat suits to experience the friction of physical reality. Right now, I am simply playing the highly specific, deeply flawed role assigned to this physical vessel for this specific lifetime. I refer to it in exactly those terms. It feels undeniably like a grueling assignment I have undertaken many times before, and one I will likely undertake again in entirely different circumstances. For me, the absolute undeniable purpose of this specific incarnation, the reason I endured the crushing and the bleeding and the pain, is the mastery of profound compassion and deep, unfiltered human connection. My daily mission is to figure out how to find it in the darkness, how to foster it in the broken, and how to cultivate it in a world obsessed with division. Stepping into the role of a doula for the dying is the ultimate culmination of that mission. Sitting at the bedside of a transitioning soul, holding their hand as the veil thins, is simultaneously the most profoundly humbling and the most infinitely rewarding work I have ever engaged in. It seamlessly pulls together every single chaotic, painful thread of my past. The agonizing challenges of my unstable childhood, the brutalizing traumatic events, the grueling years of clinical nursing, the horrific failure of the medical system, and the shattering, beautiful clarity of the near-passing experience. Suddenly, the entire chaotic mess makes absolute perfect sense. It is abundantly clear to me now exactly why I possess such a fierce, burning passion for walking alongside people as they approach the end of their physical journey, helping them intentionally and consciously prepare for the transition. Because the profound truth is this: the moment we finally gain the courage to intentionally prepare for a conscious, fearless passing, we automatically begin to live a radically more conscious, intentional life. Simply by possessing the bravery to engage in these difficult conversations, or by opening your mind to listen to accounts of the light, you are inviting a massive, transformative new awareness into your personal frequency. When you truly grasp the reality that your time in this specific physical vessel is incredibly finite, but your core essence is infinite, everything shifts. You are far more likely to forgive the petty grievances. You will hold your children a little bit tighter, lingering in the embrace. You will speak with softer, kinder words to your spouse. Most importantly, you will finally begin to treat yourself with the deep, forgiving grace you deserve. We are granted such a brief, magnificent window of opportunity, as infinite souls incarnated on this heavy, beautiful planet. We are here to desperately feel, to experience the full, agonizing spectrum of human emotion, to give love completely, to receive it graciously, and to endure the crushing weight of profound loss. There is immense, universe-altering value embedded deep within even the most devastating experiences of grief and failure. I often compare human existence to a massive, incredibly complex woven tapestry. On this side of the veil, trapped in our physical bodies, we are only capable of viewing the messy, chaotic backside of the fabric. We see nothing but a tangled mess of confusing loops, jagged knots, frayed ends, and seemingly random, ugly colors. It looks like chaotic nonsense, but the moment you cross the threshold, the moment you step into the light and view the tapestry from the perspective of the divine source, you see the breathtaking, immaculate picture on the front. You instantly realize that every single agonizing knot, every dark thread of grief, every frayed edge of trauma was absolutely, fundamentally necessary to create the perfect masterpiece of your soul's journey. Because of this profound understanding, I declare often, and with absolute sincerity, that I would never, under any circumstances, trade back a single second of my painful experiences, and I have endured horrors that break people. When I was just a fragile 11-year-old child, my biological father and my grandfather were brutally taken from this world by an act of horrific, intentional violence in the streets of Oakland. Yet, standing where I am today, bathed in the understanding of the light, I would not erase even that devastating trauma from my tapestry. That horrific loss forced open a massive, agonizing void in my heart that eventually provided the profound, soul-expanding opportunity to learn the absolute pinnacle of human capability, radical forgiveness, to actively choose against every human instinct to forgive the broken soul who unalived my family. That is a massive, evolutionary leap for a human spirit to achieve. What a staggeringly beautiful, terrifying opportunity for growth that tragedy provided. The entire focus of my existence now is to help humanity grasp this fundamental truth. I want people to understand that the universe is constantly offering us massive, life-altering opportunities for spiritual awakening and profound opening. And the most beautiful part is, you absolutely do not have to endure a horrific accident, bleed to death on a hospital bed, or cross the ultimate threshold to experience this awakening. You simply have to choose to be aggressively conscious and relentlessly intentional about how you view your existence. You must actively choose to analyze your life through the expanded, forgiving lens of the soul, rather than the terrified, defensive lens of the ego. I now actively view every single obstacle, every piece of friction, as a divine opportunity to learn and expand. Even when I am drowning in the midst of deeply challenging, painful human experiences, I force myself to pause, take a breath, and project my consciousness forward into my future, healed self. I ask the universe, what profound lesson is hidden within this pain for me to extract? Because there is absolutely always a gift hidden in the suffering. I fundamentally reject the victimizing idea that life simply happens to us, a random series of cruel events. I know with every fiber of my being that life happens exclusively for us. The universe orchestrates even the most horrific, devastating tragedies for the ultimate evolution of our souls. There is profound, universe-altering value waiting to be extracted from the darkest moments of our lives, but only if we possess the courage to sit in the ashes, digest the raw experience, and actively alchemize the pain into profound meaning. Whether that meaning serves to heal our own shattered hearts, or provides us with the empathy required to guide another broken soul through their darkness, there is a divine, perfect purpose behind every single tear. I also deeply believe that a vast majority of the massive, disruptive events in our lives, the sudden illnesses, the catastrophic failures, the devastating accidents, occur precisely because we are stubbornly refusing to walk our intended path. We are desperately clinging to a life that does not serve our soul's purpose. I am absolutely certain that is exactly why the universe forced me to endure my specific medical nightmare. I was living an incredibly destructive, entirely unconscious life, poisoning my body and radiating intense negativity toward myself. The universe tried whispering to me, and I drowned it out with alcohol and pills. So the universe had no choice but to hit me over the head with the cosmic equivalent of a massive wooden plank. The sheer violence of the medical collapse was the only thing capable of shattering my defensive walls and forcing me to wake up. If you ask me to distill the ultimate purpose of why infinite perfect energy chooses to cram itself into a fragile, decaying human body, it comes down to a single word: experience. We are here simply to experience the friction of reality, the singular mind of the universe, the divine source, the unconditionally loving light. It is the absolute culmination of all things. It encompasses every emotion, every frequency, every possibility simultaneously. But because it is everything, it exists in a state of perfect, unmoving equilibrium. It is very similar to the concept that a fish has absolutely no concept of what water is, precisely because it is constantly, entirely surrounded by it. If the source is pure, blinding white light and infinite unconditional love, it cannot truly experience what it feels like to overcome fear, to forgive a betrayal, or to choose love in the face of profound darkness. To truly know itself, the universe had to brilliantly design a complex, dense system of limitation. It had to create physical reality, a place where souls could forget their infinite nature, stumble in the dark, feel the agonizing sting of pain, and experience the profound, triumphant joy of remembering the light. The title I carry now, a doula, originates from ancient Greek, translating to a woman who humbly helps or serves. While modern society almost exclusively associates the term with the beautiful, messy process of ushering new life into the world through birth and motherhood, the profound truth is that we perform the exact same sacred, energetic work on the opposite end of the spectrum. I always refer to birth and passing as the exact same door, simply viewed from opposite sides. It makes absolute poetic sense to me, aligning perfectly with the ancient wisdom that physically being born into this dense, heavy earthly realm is actually a form of passing away from the infinite freedom of the spiritual realm. Conversely, the moment our physical bodies finally fail and we pass away from the earth, we are joyously, violently reborn back into the boundless reality of the spirit. It is a continuous, beautiful, unbroken ebb and flow of cosmic energy. I truly believe now that the entire agonizing, beautiful cycle of human life and loss is nothing more than the universe slowly, rhythmically taking a breath. Every single inhalation is a painful new beginning, a birthing into the physical. Every exhalation is a peaceful ending, a release back into the light. The universe is simply beautifully breathing us into and out of existence, over and over, until we finally learn how to love perfectly. Because what I saw in those 7 minutes, hovering in the infinite, unconditionally loving light, reviewing the massive, rippling impact of my existence, I've started seeing it again, manifesting in the quiet moments, the synchronicities, and the profound connections I make every single day, even now. And this raises one final question, a thought to ponder as you navigate the complexities of your own human experience. When someone is violently stripped of everything, their health, their career, their very heartbeat, and they return from the absolute brink not with fear or bitterness, but radiating a profound, unshakable message of radical compassion, total forgiveness, and the absolute certainty that our actions echo infinitely through the universe. We have to pause and reflect on our own journey. We must look at how we treat the stranger on the street, how we speak to our families, and most importantly, how we judge ourselves in the quiet darkness of our own minds. If the universe is meticulously recording every ripple of energy we create, what kind of waves are you sending out today? What else is still hidden, waiting to be discovered, sitting patiently in plain sight? Let us know what you think about this profound journey in the comments section below. Share your own experiences or thoughts on the transition we all must face. And please remember to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories that challenge the boundaries of what we know.